What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, but more importantly, today we are going to be doing a video on a very important gacha topic, and that of course is going to be budgeting, spending, and how I view spending in gacha games in 2022. So we're going to be talking about a very controversial topic in today's video. However, that is not the angle that I want to take with this video today. Instead, I want to go ahead and give you guys my insight and my thoughts and feelings on spending in gacha games and kind of how I approach it and how that thought process has changed over a very short period of time. And we're going to talk about it in today's video. But before we go ahead and get into all of that and more, make sure if you guys haven't already done so, you smash that like button and subscribe. And let's just go ahead and get into today's topic. So the first thing I want to go ahead and preface this with is, of course, everybody is going to have a different amount of money that they make, a different amount of money that they are willing to spend, and everybody has different priorities, and therefore it isn't going to be a catch-all for everybody with what we talk about in today's video. However, I do feel like for the majority of people out there that are like myself, they're kind of in that middle class area when it comes to just life and gacha in general, then I feel like a lot of those people are going to be able to either identify with this advice or take a lot from it, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So, of course, everybody in the comments section likes to kind of give me crap about being a quote-unquote whale. However, I feel like that has really subsided a lot over the course of the past year because it's pretty obvious at this point, if you guys have been paying attention. The only banner that I've really spent any real money into this year has been Omega Rugal's EX banner, just because that was a character that at the time I didn't have enough rubies to get him, and he had to be maxed out for me. Like, that was one of those characters that I had to have, right? So with that being said, it kind of goes back to what I always say to people about favorites. If there is a favorite, definitely go for it. However, if you're somebody that is falling into that trapping of FOMO, where basically the fear of missing out is causing you to feel like you have to invest, especially with your IRL money, into every single banner release, month after month, week after week, then you need to maybe reassess at that point. And again, depending on your budget, that may not be as big a deal for you, but for most people, I do see a lot of people fall into this trap where they end up overspending, overextending onto these banners, and then they end up regretting it later, and that only makes you resent and hate games eventually over time, because as we all know, when it comes to gacha games, nothing is guaranteed even when you're spending money, right? So that is something that you need to take into account whenever you are deciding on what you're going to be spending. Now, if we're using the King of Fighters All-Star as an example here, I want to go ahead and show you guys something. So people oftentimes ask me in the comment section, what am I purchasing, right? What packages am I buying? What is it that I'm doing? So I'm going to show you guys exactly what I do here, right? So if we take a look, you're going to see I do not even currently buy all of the subscription packages anymore. Now, it used to be, as early as maybe a few months ago even, I was buying all three of these, or at least these two right here, right? This one here, I've kind of soured on the value proposition of this one a little bit, especially considering the fact that the regular unified banner vests are not anywhere near as good as they used to be, and it's been a long time since they've been any good or even relevant, really. So with that being said, for an extra $10 over this package right here, I don't even really purchase that one anymore. And I will sometimes purchase this one, but as you guys can see, I don't even have it active right now, and it's been a little while. So with that said, this guy right here ends up being like, I think $7.99 or something. I will pick this one up every month, or every couple weeks rather. But beyond that, there's none of these other packages. Like, if you guys go through here, I don't purchase any of this stuff. So that is definitely a change that has come up this year. I did make a video at the beginning of this year letting you guys know that I was going to be changing my approach to spending in this game, and I feel like I've pretty much held to that outside of a random donation coming in for like a battle pass or something like that that I might pick up. Otherwise, I don't really bother with any of this stuff. You know, as much as people like to, you know, give me crap in the comments section sometimes, I don't purchase this stuff. Like, it's just not something that I'm interested in. So at this point, really all I try to get into is these here, and every once in a while, if a special package comes up that I really, really like, I might grab it. But even with the Black Friday stuff this year, I didn't grab a single thing. So long story short on this stuff, I wanted to show you guys kind of my approach as far as how I spend in the King of Fighters All-Star, because I want to tell you guys kind of why I've changed my opinion on this stuff, not just with the King of Fighters All-Star, but with really any gacha game in general. Now, last year I had spent quite a bit of money on the King of Fighters All-Star. I don't want to get into the exact numbers, but I spent a lot of money on this game at the time. And by the end of the year, looking back at my roster, if I look at this roster and I look at the characters on it, right? And I think about the amount of money spent on some of these characters in order to build them over the time that they were out and relevant, it really wasn't worth it. And by that, what I mean is, yes, I was getting these characters fully built. However, with power creep such as it became, especially now, these characters that I spent all this money on are no longer really all that relevant, right? And that's something that I feel like a lot of people out there can empathize with, sympathize with, and have been through. And it's not a good feeling, right? That's why I love when they buff some of these BS and these SS characters, because at least it makes some of them feel a little bit, I don't want to say future-proof because none of them are, if you compare them to EX characters, but it at least gives you some return on that investment over time, right? But when it comes to spending in a gacha game, my thought process has become, and as you guys have probably seen on my community tab, and even some of the short videos I've made, if you look behind me, you can obviously tell I'm a collector of physical items, physical media. Not just the Batman wall that you see behind me, but also this giant Dragon Ball Z display that's over here. You guys have probably seen some video of that over on my channel as well. You guys probably don't know, but I also collect things like Blu-rays and things like that because I enjoy physical media. Video games is another big one. I collect a lot of things. Now, of course, I don't spend a lot of money on that stuff at times. Like if you guys saw that collection of Dragon Ball stuff that I bought the other day, I got the most epic deal you can imagine. Put it this way, I paid about $12 per piece on that. You can do the math if you go back and watch that video. It's pretty awesome, the value that I got there. So I'm one of those people that does kind of do the deal hunting, the treasure hunting at different places. And so physical media to me means a lot, right? So it's very odd to me going into a gacha game, especially kind of with that conflicting mindset of I enjoy and always have loved physical media, but at the same time, I'm playing a digital media style game where I'm spending money on digital goods, right? And so when I thought about my value proposition and my investment last year around this time, as far as reflecting back on the year that was 2021 with this game, I really came to the conclusion that I would have preferred had I just saved all that money and spent it on physical media, right? Or spent it on something nice for somebody that I care about, or whatever the case may be. And that's just me, that's just my opinion, but this is all the long way of telling you guys that when it comes to spending in a gacha game, you have to be very careful. Spending in gacha games can get out of control very quickly. And it's one of those situations where a lot of people have compared it to gambling. In certain countries, it is considered gambling, right? And I still am of the firm belief that it should be considered that in pretty much any country, because to me it is. At the end of the day, you really are rolling on a random number generator to try and get something at random. And to me, that is not that much dissimilar to a slot machine, right? Putting money into a banner like this there isn't much difference there. And so with that said, to me, I started to last year really start to realize that that was not necessarily worth it to me. Now, for some people out there, it might be worth it. You know, some people out there, you might have the disposable income to tell you that you can do whatever it is you want to do and pull to your heart's content, A5 every character, or invest in any game. Like I said, this isn't just exclusive to the King of Fighters All-Star, but you get what I mean. If that's your prerogative and that's what you're able to do, go for it. But if you're somebody like me, and you do have a family, you do have kind of bills to pay, you have responsibilities, you're an adult, then for a lot of us, it's one of those situations where you can get yourself into trouble very quickly. And I've been blessed to never run into a situation where I'm just completely SOL, right? But at the same time, I do know people that have gotten to this point, which is partially what inspired me to make this video. Because I do know people that have overspent and really put themselves or their families in a bad situation. And I do not want to see that happen to anyone. I want to make sure that at least I do my part, because I do feel like sometimes people see me having things like all these rubies, which if you aren't somebody that watches every video, you might watch this video and go, well, hey, you've got all these rubies, you must spend a bunch. No, actually, I just haven't pulled on the past couple banners, right? And if you haven't been watching my videos over the past couple of months, you may or may not know that. So I could forgive you on that, but you should be watching the videos. But either way, when it comes to my ruby count, this is all just me saving, really. And so I showed you guys the secret shop and all that stuff in there. So with that said, you know, I feel like you don't have to necessarily be totally free to play, but I also feel like there has to be a line that has to be drawn, and you have to make a hard line in your head. To me, one of the biggest things that I've seen people fall into, and I've seen people get into big trouble, and years ago I actually fell into a trap with this: never use credit cards. Do not use a credit card on gacha games. With the amount of money that you will rack up on that credit card, not just in interest alone, but in the amount that you can easily forget that you've spent just going in and buying all these packages, because I've been there, right? I know exactly how it feels. You go into the secret shop or whatever game it is, and you go into the in-game shop where you buy whatever packages they've got, and you're like, oh, well, this package is, $3.99, and this package is $9.99. That's only $13. And then you buy a $24 package, and you're like, I've only spent like $30-40. That's not even as much as a regular video game. I could spend a little bit more. And then it starts to accumulate, right? And then you start to build up that interest on that as well. And to me, that is a big trap. I've seen people fall into this trap. I've seen people put themselves in bad positions with that. Don't do that. Do not spend the money if you do not have the money, right? That is the way I look at it. If you do not have the money to spend, do not spend it. So do not use a credit card. If you have a debit card, obviously, you have the money in your bank account and you feel comfortable parting with it for something like this, go for it. But do not do the credit card thing. I'm telling you right now, you will eventually probably regret it, unless you're somebody that is experienced enough, smart enough, and traveled enough with their expenses and their money to be able to make sure that that gets paid off within the first couple months, so you don't have to worry about it. Don't overextend. Overextending is easy to do in any gacha game, and you will regret it. Now, of course, the other big thing when it comes to these topics is, of course, the fact that there is a finite amount of time that we have with these games, right? These games are not going to be permanent. Any game that you play on your phone is not like physical media, where, like, for instance, in the other room where I have my video game collection, I literally have like tubs of Super Nintendo and NES games and Game Boy Advance games. I can go back and play those anytime I want, right? These games are not that way. This game is going to eventually go, and any gacha game that you play is eventually going to go away. So with that being said, your investment isn't going to be something that is going to give you a lot of returns down the line, right? Eventually, that investment's going to go away. So with that being said, you have to also realize that and be comfortable with the fact that eventually all that money you spent is going to be been for nothing. Now, of course, it isn't totally for nothing. You got, months, years of enjoyment out of those things, hopefully. Or maybe you were like me and you spent a bunch of money on SS and BS characters at the time, and you got a couple weeks to a couple months of enjoyment out of them. But either way, I digress. But with that said, you've got to be careful, right? You've got to be very careful with that. And you have to realize that, because that is the way of these mobile games. And like I said, they are not going to be here forever. It's not like your physical media games. And yeah, even nowadays on console, modern physical media games, some of those aren't even that way. Like, eventually they end up pulling the plug on the online, and if it was an online type game, then guess what? Well, that game is pretty much just a brick at that point, right? So, I don't want to get into that topic so much, but I did want to at least make sure that I let you guys know, or at least remind you, and especially for the people out there that might be in this weird headspace where they feel like the FOMO is just like all-consuming, that this stuff is eventually going to pass. And eventually, when this game is gone, while this game might go, that credit card debt that you might rack up won't be. And so you want to be very careful. But I wanted to make this video because I've seen some stories lately from some of the whale people that I know. Yes, I just imagine half human, half whale hybrids wandering around. Now, the whales in this game that I know, that I've talked to recently, and they have told me some kind of horror stories. And I just wanted to go ahead and kind of just put this out there. I know that people enjoy when I kind of just sit down and talk about these kind of slice of life topics when it comes to gacha games, but I really felt like this one was important. It's just kind of a reminder, PSA. Coming from somebody that has been a whale in the past. Some people would even still consider a whale, even though, whatever, at this point, I'm not going to be able to convince them otherwise, no matter what I do. And I'm not showing you my credit card statements, so, but either way, when it comes to spending on these games, just be careful. Approach it with a lot of caution. If you're like me and you're someone who does enjoy these types of games, you have to understand, especially if you're playing multiple gacha games, you have to understand that all of it adds up, right? And it's all coming from the same place. It's coming from you. It's coming from either your bank account or your credit card. God forbid. So be careful. But really, at the end of the day, I do think that, while I'm not going to get into the debate of digital versus physical media, which I personally prefer to own the things that I have, so I prefer physical. Some people prefer digital, and they were raised that way. I was raised in the 90s, so I was raised on action figures, comic books, DVDs, video games, VHS, whatever the case may be. Physical media is my thing. But either way, be careful, because at the end of the day, digital media is a fickle thing, and it will eventually go away when it comes to gacha games. And you want to make sure that you're okay with what you're investing, and you're not overdoing it, and you're not putting yourself in a position to fail. Because like I said, that will ruin your relationship to whatever game it is you're playing eventually as well. Trust me, it may not seem that way at the time, but eventually, as that debt racks up and you start to feel the squeeze of those different credit cards and all those things that you have done because of these games, you will get to a point where you'll look at the game as a negative. And I don't think you want that, and I don't think anybody wants that. But at the end of the day, that is something that can sneak up on you if you're not careful. And I get it. There is a lot of temptation. These games play so many mind games to get you to spend a lot of money. But you have to understand, it is a business, and you do not want to be the one on the business end of whatever it is that they are trying to do with some of this stuff, because it can get very predatory. We saw what happened with the Black Friday stuff, right? So just be careful, guys, and just try to use your best judgment. And if you think that you have a problem, reach out. Gambling is a major issue, and gacha is gambling. So you need to realize that early. But anyway, guys, that's just my opinion. I just wanted to put this out there. Let me know in the comments section down below what you think of all this stuff. Like, share, and subscribe on your way out. And until the next one, you all take care. Peace.
Continue.